Christ above, my friends, I hope this finds you well. So you join us on Palm Sunday, which is of course the culmination of the Lenten journey. I've decided not to appear on camera this week, as A, you're probably all sick of seeing me, and B, I've done a series of reflections again in character. So please do feel free just to sit back, close your eyes, and just let me take you back to that day, all those years ago. They said you'd come. They said you'd want to know. I don't know what happened that day. I'm just a soldier. My name is Falco, and, well, I'm a part of the garrison here in Jerusalem. Now, the sun was hot on that day, beating down on the stone walls of the city. And Jerusalem had always swelled with noise and tension during Passover. And, you know, as a soldier of Rome, you learn to keep your hand near your sword and your eyes sharp. Because these Jews, they never seem to realise that they've been conquered. That high priest Caiaphas, he did his best, and Pilate, the old man, he tolerated him. Controlled opposition was what he called him. Now again, we were used to crowds. We were even used to their strange customs. You know, their feasts, their songs, their stubborn hope in this unseen fire god of theirs, or whoever he is. But that day, something, I don't know, it felt different. We heard rumours of this bloke, of course, this Jesus of Nazareth type. A Galilean, apparently, a preacher, a prophet. Some even whispered the word king. That's dangerous talk, that, though. You see, Rome has got no room for kings except Caesar. But me and the lads, we'd laughed it off. Most of these so-called messiahs, they went out with more of a whimper than a bang. Some, if they even made it to the city, would simply be laughed at and drummed out when they revealed that they didn't actually have any powers. Most of the time, though, they were left for dead, out there in the desert. And yet that morning, the gates of the city, they echoed, not with riot or with rebellion, but with cheers. A strange word they were shouting, Hosanna. And they threw their cloaks on the ground. They waved palm branches like banners in the wind. A friend of mine, a fella named Cornelius, he was on the same rampart as me. And his face said it all. Silently we looked down from the walls and we saw the crowd starting to move as one. Pressing in around a man, riding what I thought at first was a horse. I thought, oh, here we go, he's on some sort of steed. That means he's got a few quid, right? A few denarius knocking about. But no, it weren't a horse, it weren't even a chariot, it was a donkey. A donkey. I'll admit I laughed out loud. Even my mate stoic Cornelius allowed himself a sly grin. What sort of king rides into a city on a donkey? No armour, no soldiers at his side, no power, no threat. But the people, oh, if you'd seen them, the people that treated him like royalty. Their eyes were wide with hope, their voices were loud with praise. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Well, that kind of language, that has to get some attention. I tightened my grip on my spear. Not because he looked dangerous, he actually didn't look that dangerous. Something else happened though. Something in me. The strangest thing happened. This fella on the donkey, with these people all round him cheering, he looked right up at us. Right up at me and Cornelius. But he didn't have hate in his eyes. He didn't have fear in his eyes. Most people see a Roman soldier in armour and they feel a wee bit of fear. But he looked at us with sorrow, pity, almost as if he knew something we didn't and he felt bad for us for it. And some of them Pharisees, they shouted at him to quiet the crowd. I was hoping, in all honesty, he'd listen to calm things down a bit. But he said something really funny back. He said if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. Who talks like that? There was no insurrection that day. There was no rebellion, thank heavens. But the city held its breath. You could feel it, like the ground itself knew something special had just passed through its gates. Listen, I'm a soldier. I'm trained in war. I'm told to obey my commanders, to fight and kill what's in front of me. I've seen many men ride into cities as conquerors, but never one like him. No armour, no sword, just peace. And he held something that was much heavier than any weapon. He held an authority, a different kind of power. It seemed to almost radiate off him. And I didn't understand it. I still don't, not fully. But something in me moved that day. The cheers of the people, they still echo in my ears. They were joyful and desperate all at once. I've tried to talk to Cornelius about it, but I don't know, something's off with him lately. It's like he's wrestling with something inside. Maybe that's why even now when my watch has ended and I'm back on my bunk. But I wonder if the real battle that day, I wonder if it ain't about nations or empires. Maybe it was about hearts after all. Maybe it was about mine. I remember the dust. It clung to our robes, it filled the air as we walked. Jerusalem rising like before us like a crown on a hill. And we were tired from the road, but there was a fire in Jesus that morning. Something resolute in his step. Usually, see, he'd be jovial. He would smile and help with breakfast. But this morning was different. He was focused. And we felt it. Every one of us felt it as the city came into view, and finally I understood. He wasn't just walking into a city. He wasn't just walking into a throne. I was afraid, though. He'd told us time and time again what would happen to him here in this city, and we tried not to think about it too much. I mean, that's a problem for the future, right? Right? The future, though, suddenly it was here. Now. The city loomed large, and suddenly I was afraid. And then he took two of us to one side, and he told us to fetch a donkey. I didn't understand it. Why a donkey? Why not a horse? Why not a symbol of his power, of his kingship? He is the Messiah. He'd been given all of creation. I'd seen him speak to Moses. But Jesus was never like the kings of this world, like that dog Herod or Caesar who's obsessed with power. Jesus was always fulfilling what had been written. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey. Those are the words from the Old Testament. And yet, that word sticks out to me. Gentle. He entered like no other king would. Not to take, but to give. He didn't come with soldiers, he came with peace. As we approached the gates and people began to gather, they took off their cloaks and they laid them down. They cut branches from the trees and they waved them like flags. They shouted with voices of hope, of desperation. They shouted things like, Hosanna to the Son of David, and blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I had never seen anything like it. I'd seen crowds before, of course. I was with him on the mount. I was there when he restored sight to the blind. I was there when he fed 5,000 people with next to nothing. I was there when he raised Lazarus. People were healed. People were fed, amazed by his power. But this was not like those times. This was so much different. They weren't just praising a teacher. They weren't just giving thanks for a miracle. They were welcoming a king. And in that moment I believed, maybe this was the time. Maybe the kingdom was about to come in ways that we'd always imagined. The way Peter, myself and the others had so often talked about. Rome thrown down, Jesus enthroned, Israel restored. Even I was caught up, and even I shouted Hosanna. And then I saw it. I saw such sadness in his eyes. The way he looked at the city, not with pride, not with triumph, but with tears just behind his gaze. It's as if he knew that these very same voices might cry something else just a few days later, like he'd always told us. And still he didn't turn back. Still he rode on. I wanted him to turn and go. I wanted him to run. But he didn't. He rode right into the heart of the city, right into the heart of the storm. And me, I walked beside him, not fully understanding it, of course. Not then. But I know now what I didn't then. He was choosing the path of peace. He was offering himself. He didn't demand loyalty or power. He was the kind of king who enters gently and yet shakes the foundations of the world. Looking back, I realised that that moment, that entry, was not the beginning of a revolution. It was the beginning of redemption. And that donkey, well, it wasn't weakness. It was prophecy. It was humility. It was love on display, riding straight toward the cross, carrying the weight of a broken world and each and every one of us with it. Hosanna, we cried. Save us, Lord, we pleaded. And he did. Just not in the way that we expected, but in the way that we needed it the most. I remember the noise, the shouting, the clamour, the energy. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. I'd heard of him, of course, Jesus. I'd heard the stories from the travellers coming into the city. They were always generous when I begged for coin, and then they'd tell me of this Jesus. They'd tell me of the healings, they'd tell me of his miracles. And a man who touched the untouchable, who spoke with authority and yet never with pride, who loved with a depth that made even the toughest hearts tremble. Well, let me tell you, I had a tough heart. But when he came, I couldn't see him. I couldn't witness the wonder with my own eyes. But then that day happened. That day. I had heard the crowd coming long before I felt the vibrations of his steps through the ground. Jesus of Nazareth is coming, the street children had cried. The street children, they always did me right. Sometimes I'd share coin with them, sometimes they'd share food with me. But that day, though, their words washed over me like a wave. I couldn't see, but I could hear the hope in their voices. It was like a storm on the horizon, and I could feel it deep in my bones. I cried out. I couldn't stay silent. I'd been silenced long enough by the darkness of my blindness, by the isolation of my own poverty. I knew that today was different. And so I cried out again, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. They tried to quiet me. The crowd, the people around me, they said, oh, blind Bartimaeus, shut up, sit down. They told me to be quiet. They told me to wait my turn, to be invisible as always, to stay out the way. But something in my heart, it burned hotter than the sun that day. I didn't care what they said. I was not going to let this moment slip me by. Let them stone me. Old blind Bartimaeus. I was a desperate man with nothing to lose, so I called out again, Son of David, have mercy on me. And then quiet. I felt the shift, and I know it sounds silly, but I could feel their eyes on me. And that was the moment when everything changed. Someone called out to me. He said, take heart, get up, He's calling you. It was as if the world opened up, and even without my sight, I didn't need my eyes to know that Jesus had heard me. I jumped up, and the cloak that had been my protection, my shelter from the world, I tossed it aside. I ran, I stumbled best I could towards his voice. And then, there he was, Jesus. I was so afraid I'd bump right into him. It's silly, really. I could sense him even before I felt his hand reach out. His voice said to me with such gentleness, "What do you want me to do for you?" He asked me. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a proposal. It was a question, but it was full of compassion. And for a moment I didn't have no words. What could I ask for when the one who could heal me was standing right in front of me? What could I possibly say that could be worthy of such a gift? But I knew what I needed. And so I said, "Rabbi, I want to see." And in that moment the darkness lifted. The veil was torn from my eyes. It was so bright. I remember feeling pain and yet wonder all at the same time. And I realised something. I could see. I could see the world as it truly was, full of light and life and colour. And I looked up and I could see it. I saw him. I saw his face. He was smiling. And it weren't arrogant. It weren't, "Look at me, ain't I great" smile. It was a smile of joy. A smile of welcome. A smile of love. And that's not the end of my story. No way, I followed him. When he left Jericho, I went with him. I joined the crowd following him. I served him as best as I could on the road. And then we arrived at Jerusalem. And then I heard the crowd shouting. Not in desperation, but in celebration. They were shouting the words I'd heard many times before. "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And I knew immediately what was happening. The king was entering the city. I didn't just see the king with my new eyes that I had seen him with that fateful day in Jericho. I saw my king. In Jesus that day I saw something more. He wasn't coming just to take back a throne. He was coming to heal, to redeem, to restore everything. Not just the sight of one blind, broken old man, but of all of us, of a broken world. I stood there in the crowd, the same crowd that had once turned away from me, now joining in with their praises, welcoming him as their king. And I had waited for a moment like this my whole life. The moment when the blind would see, the moment when the outcast would be welcomed, when the broken would be made whole. And I, Bartimaeus, once a beggar by the road, was now standing with the people, shouting my own Hosanna. Because the one who had healed me, the one who had seen me when no one else did, was now the king of the world. And I think back on that day and I see it more clearly than ever. He didn't just open my eyes physically, he opened my heart. He showed me that the king who came in on a humble donkey was not just the king of Israel. He is my king. He's the king of all. Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And I see it now. The true kingdom has come, and it's not just in the streets of Jerusalem, it's in the hearts of anybody who chooses to believe in him. And those of us that do, we know that the king is coming. For all of us. You know, it's funny the things that you remember first. For me, it's always scents. I remember the scent first. It lingered in the house. It was rich and sweet. It was a fragrance that seemed to fill every corner, every room. Mary had opened the expensive jar of perfume and she just poured it out onto Jesus' feet. She wiped them with her hair and the whole house was filled with the fragrance of it. And that other guy that was with my friend Jesus, what was his name? Judas, him. He had an ill look about him. I didn't like him very much, but he told my sister off for using the expensive perfume. I was about to launch in and tell him who the hell did he think he was really, but Jesus beat me to it and shut him up. But that perfume wasn't just perfume. It was worship. And I would know that because I was there. I had no right being there. I had no business being there. I shouldn't have been there. You see, friends, I'd been dead and buried for 4 days. I'm the one whose name they whispered in awe and disbelief. I'm the one who, whenever I walk into the tavern, it goes quiet. I see the looks and I hear the half-whispered, the glances, the comments. But it was me. I was the one who had walked out of the tomb, alive. When Mary poured that perfume on Jesus, though, it wasn't just a ritual. It was an offering. It was a symbol of what he had done for me, of what he had done for all of us. You see, I know what it is to be dead. I know the stillness. I know the coldness. I know the darkness. And when they buried me, they thought I was gone for good. And I can't describe how it feels. There's only one word I can use. Stillness. Those who loved me, though, my sisters, my friends, it was the end. No more laughter. No more conversations. No more days spent together. But for Jesus, my dear friend, it wasn't just the end, it was only the beginning. He came to my tomb, but he didn't see the place of death. He saw it as a place where life could bloom again. And then he called to me, he shouted, "Lazarus, come out!" And I had no choice. Oh, I had to obey. There was this stiffness in my joints, and I began to breathe again, and that was such a strange feeling when you have to learn how to breathe again. And I had to walk out of that tomb. My legs, they started to walk one in front of the other. My joints were stiff. Everything ached. My muscles screamed at me. But I walked out of that tomb, and I was wrapped in my grave clothes. And I was alive. I wasn't just restored to life. No. I was resurrected. I was something more. I was a life with new purpose. I was a life that could never go back to what it was before. And now here I am sitting at my table. The same table I've sat at before with Jesus. And he sat there and we ate together and we chatted as friends do. And he looked at me with the smile. Jesus always had this little smile, like he knows something. And honestly, it was always reassuring to see him smile like that. My friend, my saviour. When he smiled like that, I knew he was on top of things. I knew things were going to be all right. It's only a few days now before Passover, and the city is buzzing with anticipation. People are coming in from every direction to see Jesus, to hear him, to see the man who brought the dead man back to life. But that day, mercifully, I wasn't the one they were focused on. The crowds had gathered to see Jesus, the man who broke the hold of death. And there were some there who came to see. They came to see me. It was an odd feeling. I mean, I could understand it, though. I was the man who had been dead. And now here I was, sitting alive, eating, laughing and talking. I was acting like nothing had ever happened. But deep down inside, everything had changed. And so I heard about the crowds and the voices of the people on the streets that day in Jerusalem, crying and cheering and shouting out. They shouted things like, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." They waved palm branches. They laid them before him. They welcomed him as a king. Oh, Jesus, my friend. They welcomed him as a king. Yes, absolutely, I could imagine it. The travellers that told me this. They didn't understand it, but I did. You see, he was the king. He was the one who had come to bring life, not just for the nation of Israel, but for all people. For all of us who were once dead in our sin, dead in our hopelessness. I may have been dead physically, my friend, but let me make things very, very clear. Jesus delivers us from more than just physical death. And now, well, I sat at that table that day, and Jesus, my friend, he told me he was off now to Jerusalem to do his great work. And we talked about it a little, just he and I, late at night when my sisters were in bed. I think then, and I think now, about how different my life is. How everything is different now. I'd been dead, but now I was alive because of him. And yet, in that moment of joy, in our conversation sat at my kitchen table, I could see the shadow of what was coming. I remembered the tension in Jesus' eyes. That smile that I told you about, my friend, that cute little smile, it faltered for just a moment, because he knew what was ahead. He knew the path he was walking. He knew where it would lead, and very soon those very same people who cried out, "Hosanna!" would soon cry out something very different. The same hands that waved palm branches in praise would soon be involved in condemning him to death, but he didn't stop. I know Jesus. He wouldn't have stopped. He wouldn't have turned away from the path of suffering, and he would not have hesitated, because he knew what would come after. He knew that through death there could be life. As I think back on that day when he bid me walk out that tomb, I realised that my resurrection wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. It was a sign. It was a glimpse of what he could do for the whole world. He didn't come just to raise a single man from the dead. He came to raise all of us, to give all of us new life. The life I now have in him, a life that will never end. I hear the Pharisees plan to kill me to undo Jesus' work, because I scare them, because I am a sign of what he can do and will do for each of us, because I know what that means. I knew that the one who called me out of the tomb was now entering the city to die for us, because I know what it means. I know that the one who called me out of the tomb was now entering that city to die for us, for the world. He gave me life, and now he was about to give his life, and in his death all of us will find life. Let the Pharisees come. They cannot undo what he has done. He is the King, he is the one, he is the Lord of all. They cannot undo his work. And yet I weep. I weep for him because of all that he will bear. I weep for him because I shan't ever see my beloved friend again in this life. I weep for those who will do this terrible thing to him. Because he is my friend, but more than that, he is our King, he is our Lord, he is our Saviour. And I can only hope that those who he gives his life for are as grateful for the life he gives them as I am for the life that he gave me.